Where do we come from? Where are we going? Asking those questions is the whole purpose and intent of interim ministry. And I want to just check. How many of you here knew that I am an interim minister? Oh, good. Oh, good. Because this fellowship is in search for a settled minister. My work has been focused on helping you ask, where do we come from? Where are we going? You may not have realized that. It's a little bit of a stealth mission to some extent until we get to this point in the interim ministry. When you are in search for a new minister and you can sort of turn around and look over the past few years and think about what it is that the last time of interim ministry has actually done for you. You may not be able to see. I can see things that may not be immediately clear to you because this is my work, this transition ministry work. And I've seen the changes, the small ones and the larger ones, in other congregations. And I see some of that here. Now, this Sunday is supposed to be what the Stewardship Committee calls Inspiration Sunday. And I think the Stewardship Committee thinks that I am here today to inspire you to make a financial commitment in the stewardship drive that kicks off on Saturday. Well, sort of. I will say that whenever any congregational leader has said that this is Inspiration Sunday and that's my mission, there's always someone in the room who says, no pressure. Yeah, no pressure. But the truth is there is no pressure because it is not my job to inspire you. You are your own inspiration. And I find that you have inspired me as I think about where you've come from and where you're going. So let's talk a minute about the origins of this fellowship. You know, sometime in the 1950s, a group of people who lived in Harford County got a little tired of making the trek to Baltimore every Sunday to go to the Unitarian Church there. And so they decided to start a Unitarian fellowship in Harford County. And one of the things they were very concerned about was the values education of their children. That was really important. And another thing was to be able to develop a community of people who shared their values, who could feel included in this kind of a faith tradition. And some of the values included taking action for civil rights. One of the heroes of this congregation is Charlie Reed, who really worked hard on fairness and equity in housing and in education. And when I first arrived, many people told me not only about him, but about Reverend Lisa Ward, who was known throughout this region as a minister who really cared about civil rights and who did a lot of good work. And over many years, this congregation developed a commitment to the individual members' emotional and spiritual growth, so that gradually this fellowship became a community of people bonded in covenant and committed to caring about their neighbors. And there is probably no clearer evidence of that than the draft mission statement that all of you have worked on this past year, through small group conversations, those faithful conversations, and a workshop on mission and vision. And finally, a small team developed the draft of a mission statement that you are even now still considering. But look what it says. And it's not wildly different from your mission statements of the past, but you had a chance in this interim period to consider what was important to you and to restate your mission to reflect that. And it's no surprise to me that you've had similar ideas in past mission statements. But I love what you've done. The mission is to grow together in welcoming, inclusive fellowship, explore the richness and mystery of all stages of our spiritual and earthly lives, to radiate love and justice into our community and our world. So what I hear in this mission statement is this idea that the unfinished work of our heroes must be our own. That is what I see you saying when you talk about radiating love and justice into the world. This isn't an idea that there are certain people who will carry all the water. The idea is that with love at the center, this fellowship will radiate out love and justice through the efforts of many people and many hands and many minds. Because, as the song says, we can't let the future become our past if we are to change the world. And what I understand that to mean is that we don't want a circle where this is the way it was and we go through some years and then we circle back and do exactly what it was before. Instead, it's a spiral. And this is what I'm seeing in this fellowship. I'm seeing this spiraling and the idea we respect the heroes of the past, but you know what? I see emerging here a fellowship of people where everyone is a hero. Everyone is ready to see beyond the horizon and do what must be done. Past and present, paired and paralleled, it is the future we save from ourselves for ourselves. And this is what I've seen in so many congregations, that the interim time is a time when the congregation figures out what it values in the past, and it figures out how to move forward into the future in a way that doesn't just repeat the past, but that builds on it. And that is inspirational. And I see that here. One of the areas in which I think our Unitarian Universalist congregations struggle with, and any group of humans, honestly, and really how a group of humans saves the future from themselves for themselves really does depend on how that group handles contentious issues. And this is definitely a challenge that comes up again and again. And I have my theories about why. It's not just here, it's everywhere. And I want to share with you an interaction I had just, maybe last week with a young minister, very new to ministry, who was describing what was happening in their congregation. And the description was of solo actors making decisions that they weren't actually authorized to make on behalf of the congregation and the emotional urgency they feel about it. So the solo decider, I used to say lone ranger, but not everybody maybe remembers who the lone ranger is. So solo decider is someone who takes action without consulting others. So an example is a member, not here, a member who submitted a complaint to a town official about a hazardous situation in the congregation's building that it turns out the official already knew about because the Building and Grounds Committee and the board had reported it to the official and agreed on a plan of action. But the solo decider not only made the report, but then came to the minister and came to a group of people meeting to talk about safety in the building with this sense of urgency to do something right away. And so, the second thing that is a challenge for our congregations, and I want to say probably all groups of humans, is how to avoid using an inadequate process. Instead, using a good, healthy process to make decisions around contentious issues. And one of the impulses people seem to have, and I'm speaking from years, nearly 25 years of experience in ministry and seeing congregations in their interim periods. One of the impulses people have is to demand an immediate congregational meeting with an up or down vote on a contentious issue before there is any small group conversation and information sharing. And it's absolutely, totally predictable that if a congregation goes into a meeting with no preparation around the issue and it's raised for an up or down vote, there will be this horrible discussion where people immediately polarize. Some loud voices immediately polarize, and everybody else kind of ducks and covers. And that is not healthy, and it's not a good process. It's not a process, actually. But this is probably embedded, this approach is probably embedded in Unitarian Universalism's greatest misunderstanding about democracy, that the best way to decide something is to have a large group debate followed by a vote. And it's not. The best way is to use a good process to gather and share information through channels the congregation has established, like the Buildings and Grounds Committee, the board. And, if need be, have congregational conversations in small groups to listen to other members, to talk calmly and face to face, and to really hear one another. I wonder what other members think about this situation. And that is a question that cannot be answered without making sure that everyone has the full information base. One of the things that I've encountered that is not helpful is I understand the difference between calling the minister's attention to something so that the minister can suggest to other leaders that a conversation process might be a good idea. We've done this with a number of issues in our Faithful Conversations process. We've also done it right after a potluck, sitting around the tables in small groups, talking to one another about the issue, and then reporting out so that everyone hears the comments and writing them down so there's a record. Those are great methods. And that's one thing to approach the minister about, to say, do we need a process? I'm worried about this. What should we do? But the approach people often take, especially when I'm new, because they haven't sort of figured out that I'm a kind of a process person, is to demand that the minister take immediate action. This is a problem. This is the solution. Minister, you must take immediate action. What are you going to do? And my answer in my head, admittedly, I don't say this out loud, is I am not the Pope. In this fellowship, I have seen again and again leaders who say, let me consult with others. Let's find out what members think about this. Let's have small group congregational conversations about the issue, whether informally around the tables after the potluck, and if needed, more formally with facilitators and a written facilitator guide. It gives me hope, not just for this fellowship, but for all Unitarian Universalist congregations and for the world, because this is real democracy. This is democracy in the sense of really listening to the softest voices and checking with others before engaging in solo action or forcing a vote. I do believe that the actions of this fellowship's people, actions taken today, are essential to that one infinite story of what it is to be alive. And that the light we find here, the light that you create, you bring, you share, must spill to shine. And that is in the mission draft in the word radiate. This much is true. We were made to carry each other. And not just within this room or the folks who are listening online. We were made, we humans, to carry each other. Not the same person always being the one who carries, and the same person always being the one who is carried, but a mutual sharing of the burdens of life. So the challenge that this congregation has met during the transition period, during this interim ministry, is to see the day beyond the horizon and the world the way it could be, and then do what must be done. And on behalf of the Stewardship Committee, I say to you, who would not want to support financially an institution or group that is actually doing what must be done, that is actually working to see beyond the horizon? I mean, I'm inspiring myself here. Within the heart of each person, it's important to grow a loving heart. And there are so many spiritual development programs here that I actually feel moved to tears when I think about how many of you are working on growing that loving heart, that calm, centered spirit. And as a community, I see you are building a community that really does have love at the center. The recent work 3 years ago on covenant, and the work we've done during the interim on covenant, and the recent discussion of a right or respectful relations policy, all of that is about building a community with love at the center. And here the UUA comes along and says, okay, these are the new values, love at the center. Well, you've been working on that before it became part of the list of the 7 UU values. And finally, finding ways to radiate love and justice into the wider community, into the world. I have seen you create new ways to do that. From the hygiene pantry to your work with other congregations. And We can't solve the problems by thinking about them ourselves and making a solo decision. But humans in community who not only discuss within their own community what might be the day beyond the horizon and what might need to be done, and then go out and discuss that with other communities who are also thinking about how they can do what must be done. That is how we save the future for ourselves and for all posterity. So here's what I see. Here's what I see after 2.5 years here as your interim minister. You in this fellowship are creating from your origins, your ancestry, your knowledge of who you are, an understanding of who you seek to become. That understanding is to be people who see the day beyond the horizon and do what must be done. You are answering the call of love. So let's sing about it. Hymn number 1014, Answering the Call of Love.